Hello. I'm making this YouTube video for the sake of individuals who are struggling with a pornography addiction and who would like to overcome it. I myself have struggled with a pornography addiction for over a decade, and through that struggle, I've learned many things that have helped me to develop a method to conquer it. And I've also studied the journeys of others who have struggled with the addiction and learned from them as well. And I just wanted to share my own personal method that I've formed throughout these years that I believe can help just about anybody who genuinely wishes to quit pornography. The first thing that you need to realize is that you have to want to quit this more than anything else in your life. You have to be willing to give up anything necessary if it means that you can win. For me, I had to give up hanging out with certain people. I had to give up lifestyle choices that weren't helping me at all. I had to stop going to bars and clubs and places that would trigger me. I had to form a routine to keep myself occupied with positive activities, and there's a lot more to it than just that. But I personally I discovered that through the deepest, darkest places that I entered, that I genuinely want to succeed at rooting this out of my life more than anything else in the world. And I'm not just saying that. That's the point that I got to. So, if you really want to quit this, you have to go deep inside and determine for yourself whether or not you're ready and whether or not you really, really want it. And if you know that you do, then this video will most certainly help you. And it will help you regardless. But from the bottom of my heart, I empathize. I totally understand how it feels to be in this addiction, and especially in the places where you really don't know if you can get out of it, where you really see the hold it has on you, and it's really scary and dark. But there is a way out, and I have figured out my own way through it that I'm going to share with you. Once you determine for yourself that you're ready to quit, that you want it enough to sacrifice anything in your life that can hinder your success, then you need to determine your why. Why is it that you want to quit porn? You can go even deeper than that and try to figure out what your purpose is. The stronger reasoning you can formulate for yourself to find a way and a why, then the higher chance of success you will have at succeeding. Because when you're in those moments where an urge may arise, you have much to draw on in those moments. And you need something in those moments, otherwise you will just shift back into an unconscious state and delve right back into the darkness that is pornography. So determine your why. A very good program that I recommend if you really don't know your purpose, or if you're having trouble diving deep in general, introspectively, is the self-authorization program by Jordan Peterson. It's like a 4-part program that goes into your past, present, and future. It goes very deep, and it helps you to answer many questions that you may have never even asked yourself, to determine certain things that will really help you just in every aspect of life, but especially in conquering an addiction. Now, once you determine that you want to quit, you want to form a plan of some kind. And you don't have to put tons of thought into it. it can just be something very basic, like you figure out what you need to remove. That's a very good place to start. You figure out what you need to remove, and you start to work at removing those things. You start to figure out what kind of people in your life aren't serving you. You start to figure out what you are doing on a daily basis that is keeping you locked in that mental state of essentially a slave. You're a slave to the things around you, to entertainment, to instant gratification as a whole. And you'll start to determine through your self-reflection why that is and what you can do to get out of it. And you can start working to remove those things. But while you're doing that, you also need to replace those bad habits with good habits. And I'll get into that for sure. Once you figure out your purpose, you want to reflect on it every single day. You want to be reminding yourself of it as often as possible. You want it to have it memorized. You want it to be there at all times. Like, whenever a demon, or whatever you want to call it, comes at you, you want to have it like a sword in your sheath, just ready to strike at any moment. Starting out, you want to set achievable goals. You want to make sure that the goals that you're setting for yourself are not too far out. You want to make sure that even from the lowest possible state, from rock bottom, that these are things that you can do. And I'll be straight up. When I was at the lowest point that I was at, I was not taking care of myself physically. I didn't want to do anything productive. I just wanted to hide and run away and distract myself as much as I could. So for me, it was a very good starting place to simply just fix my sleep schedule and get personal hygiene back as a habit, because it got to that point. And I'm sure that many of you can relate. When you're deeply depressed, it's hard to do anything. But those are just examples of some goals you can set. And then once you start to achieve those goals, you can find new ones that may be a little bit more difficult to achieve. And a very good rule of thumb is it takes about 30 days to form a habit, but it takes more like 90 days to actually make it a permanent lifestyle change. So if your first goal is to form a habit of, daily meditation, working out a few times a week, then after about a month of doing that, then that's a great time to work on forming a new habit, because that is sort of automated at that point. It may not be permanent, but it's automated, so you don't have to think as much about it. It doesn't require as much willpower to accomplish it. So that would be a good point to start finding new goals. But there's definitely more to it, and I'm going to go over everything that I can that will be of help. So removing triggers is absolutely crucial. And I'll lay it out very plainly, so that, because I want to make this clear, and I don't want to lie to anybody. I don't want to make people think that they can succeed by doing something that they shouldn't do, because for me personally, and for many people that I know, and many people that I've studied, they only succeeded, they only stopped relapsing entirely once they made every sacrifice that they knew that they had to make. And a lot of people do know what's best for them, and they just don't want to act accordingly. But if you want to quit an addiction of this caliber, you have to. There's no choice. But for me, I had to quit social media. I had to stop listening to certain types of music. I had to stop playing video games. I had to stop diverting so much of my attention to entertainment, Netflix, whatever it was that I was doing that was just for instant gratification. Changed my diet up. I stopped hanging out with certain people. I stopped going to certain places. There's just so much. But I realized that by doing all of those things, I left nothing left on the playing field. Like, there was no more room for failure at that point, because I was putting all of my effort, everything that I knew I needed to do. I was doing everything, and it allowed me to succeed. By the grace of God, I was able to succeed. And God is a whole other factor in this that I'll have to get into, but we'll do that later. So, in terms of forming a routine, which is an essential aspect of this, it's a very strong pillar in this method. You need to go out of your way to take some time to just figure out your schedule, your work schedule, figure out how you can form a routine around it, so that it won't be a routine. It has to be, like I said with the goals, it has to be accomplishable. You need to be able to, look at the routine little by little, every little detail on it, every little time slot, and know that you will be able to do it. Of course, life is messy, and there are times when external sources will prevent you from maybe doing certain things that you have in your routine, and that has to be accounted for as well. So what I did personally is I set some essential foundational principles. There are maybe 3 or 4 things that I must do every single day without fail. And the rest of it is basically open, but there are certain things I aim to do each day. But if you have those essential things, and you know that nothing can stop you from doing those things, then you basically already won. I mean, for me, prayer, scripture, meditation, and that's basically it. And memorizing scripture. I like to read it and I like to memorize it. I like to have as much ammunition in my arsenal as I can to fight off the demons of lust and sexual sin. So, forming a routine, crucial. There's a lot you can do throughout your routine. I'm going to go into more detail towards the end of the video on a good way, like a good layout for it. Just want to make sure you're filling your day with positive activities, keeping yourself as busy as you can. I mean, ideally you want to have, it's very important to have free time. I mean, you need to have downtime, you need to have certain times to just relieve stress. That's very important, but other than that, free time, and it's got to be managed. Time management is incredibly important. You need to just be aware of those things. And by keeping yourself busy, you leave very little time for those urges to come up and to start to weigh on you. This brings up a point that I wanted to discuss about time. Time for me in the beginning was very, very important, because by taking a few minutes to just think about it, to just think about time and how little there is in this life. I mean, you look at older people, they tell you, oh, my life went by so fast. They're not kidding. I mean, that is literally the way it goes. And we want to be young and have fun and do all these things and just forget about responsibilities later. But by the time we really get around to it, there's so many regrets, and we've gone through so much pain already, and we've already just accumulated so much weight. So by realizing the value of time and realizing that you can use it to your advantage, if you just make small positive steps forward to grow, to become the person that you've always desired to be. And when you do that, then you start to really realize that if you don't get to work, then your life is just going to be miserable. It's essentially like the difference between living in hell on earth or heaven on earth. Now, back to the routine. For me, waking up early is very important because my schedule allows me to do that. If you work at like a nightly job, it's not ideal to do that. You need your sleep, of course. Sleep is like extremely important because when you're resting, you're reaccumulating more willpower. And I mean, willpower unfortunately is finite. You don't have unlimited because burning out is very real, and I've burned out many times, and I will absolutely discuss that as more in depth as well, because burning out is something you really want to avoid. But sleep is really important, so you have to prioritize. One thing I will say, consistent sleep is more important than the amount of hours, so quality over quantity. I get about 6 hours of sleep every night, and I feel very rested when I wake up. You also want to time your sleep schedule to the cycles. One sleep cycle is 90 minutes, so if you make sure you wake up at the end of a sleep cycle, you're going to feel more rested than if you wake up in the middle or at the beginning of one. It's just how it works. So keep that in mind. Consistent 6 hours is better than 8 hours here, 5 hours there, 10 hours here. Trust me, it's just how it is. I've learned these things, and all I wish for is to be able to share them with you honestly and openly. Now, if you do struggle with waking up early, and that's something that you want to do is to wake up earlier so you can have more time to do positive things throughout your day, then I recommend getting multiple alarms. I have one set on the other side of my room from where my bed is, and it's not my phone, it's like an actual alarm clock. I prefer to sleep with my phone outside of my room. So when I wake up, I have to go across my room, and I actually set another alarm in a different room, and it's loud, so I know that if it goes off, it's going to wake up other people in my house. So I make sure it's an extra step that really gets you aware of the fact that you need to wake up. You have things you need to do, and so setting 2 alarms is a pretty good thing to consider. But yeah, I want to move on from the routine for now and get back to it a little later and get into urges and how to deal with them. So the deciding factor in whether you succeed or fail is your ability to deal with urges. And I couldn't mean that more plainly. If you don't know how to deal with urges, when they arise, you are always going to fall victim to them. And luckily, there are a lot of different ways you can deal with them. I personally have found that I like to deal with them in the same way every time, which is like reciting scripture or praying. But there are a lot of other ways. I mean, you can, if you have that strong why, like I discussed earlier, you can recall on that during an urge, and it will help you to realize the absolute horrors that will await you if you give in. And that's just it. I mean, remembering your why is one way, praying, reading scripture. Wow, I can't even read my own handwriting. Yes. So one thing that's really good when you get an urge that is pretty reliable, but it is harder to do than just thinking of something in your mind, is just getting up and running, literally fleeing, like it says in scripture. Flee from lust, like working out, running, going out on a walk in nature. Those things will benefit you so much when you have an urge. Anything to get your mind off of it, away from it, and really just getting away from your phone too. I mean, because for most people that's their thing that will actually be the catalyst for the relapse. So just getting away from it, fleeing, just praying. I mean, so many different things you can do in those moments, but I prefer to pray or read or recite scripture. Now, meditation is very valuable in fighting with urges, because if you meditate frequently, you will have a clear mind more frequently. And with a clear mind, you are able to recognize the thoughts that spark an urge before the urge is even there. And you really want to get in the habit of sort of defeating the urge before it basically recognizing a temptation when it becomes a temptation, and then cutting it off before it develops into anything more than that. There's a quote from The Art of War by Sun Tzu, which is, I believe it goes something along the lines of, the greatest honor in battle is defeating an enemy without fighting. And my interpretation of that is, well, actually, a more accurate interpretation of it as a whole would be, and especially in this context, dealing with lust, you cannot fight it with more violence. You cannot fight evil with more evil. You have to fight it with love, or just pure action. So when you have a temptation to watch pornography, by praying, by reciting scripture, by feeling grateful, feeling deep feelings of gratitude, you are responding to it with love, which literally is just starving it. And it's just a tried and true and legitimate method to overcoming urges on a moment-to-moment basis. And that's all it is it's moment to moment. Living life moment to moment will allow you to really take in the beauties of life, and when you have those urges, you'll be able to deal with them accordingly. My final point here, or there might be a few more actually, but a very important point here, very important. I would honestly maybe take notes on this if you have a pen and paper, but being fully aware that giving into the urge or choosing not to give into the urge is completely up to you. It is a choice that you are making consciously. That's why remaining as conscious as you can is very important. It plays into the meditation and doing certain things to keep yourself in a clear and focused and healthy mental state. If you're in that state, you can consider yourself relatively conscious. Whereas if you were a slave to the things around you and you just fall into these patterns that you don't even want, that aren't even part of you, you're not very conscious of what you're doing. So that's why the more conscious you are, the better you're going to be at making the right choices. And if you're aware of your why, if you know why you want to quit, if you have all this ammunition, if you're aware of all these things that I'm going over here, then when the thoughts arise, when those urges come, you can easily say, I'm going to choose the life that I wish to live for myself. I'm not going to choose this life that has caused me so much pain and anguish over the years, this evil, this dark thing that hurts myself and people around me. It just makes it much more clear, and you can see all those things in those moments when you have the urges. Because sometimes in my experience, and I'm really grateful and blessed to be able to share this, my own personal story in some way, because I'm sure that so many people can relate to this. Before I really started to make sacrifices, when I would have those urges, they would be so overpowering. It would be like all the stuff I'm talking about would just go out the window. and the only thing I would feel was a strong pull to give in, and it was just like, it was almost as if I didn't have any other choice, because I literally felt as if I would die, and that is a whole part of the withdrawal symptoms, and I'm going to go over that as well. But the key to take from that is, the more effort you're putting in, the higher of a chance you will have at being able to be victorious against those urges when they arise. And they will arise. And it's totally random when they come to. I mean, for some people, you get more closer to bed or in the middle of the day. Mainly they'll come when you're not doing anything. That's why staying busy is important. But yes, if you are following all these things, all these steps, then when they arise, you're going to be very well equipped to win. Okay, moving on. Taking time every day to relieve stress. Super important. Very crucial. So, obviously, relieving stress is important. If you build up too much stress or pressure, then you'll get overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, especially if you've run out of willpower, you'll burn out. And when you burn out, relapse is just one hair's width away. So, you need to relieve stress, but you need to do it in a healthy way. Now, unfortunately, most of the ways you can be relieving stress are not going to give you as much dopamine as pornography is, and that's just something that you have to accept. In the beginning stages of quitting this addiction, you are not going to feel very good. You will, at times, feel very positive and happy because you're making progress, but for the most part, the first few weeks, the withdrawals are very intense. You feel moody, angry at times, very sad. You don't feel much pleasure from anything around you, but you just, regardless of all of that, you have to be able to de-stress. I like to go on walks, go to the beach and swim. I like to watch anime. I like to read, things like that are very healthy, but they do just allow you to take a minute and just really just let go of whatever's stressing you out. So that's very important, to release that pressure that's building up in you so you can continue on your journey towards overcoming the addiction. In those moments when you're struggling with temptation or dealing with an urge, if you can't think of anything, if it's so overwhelming that you can't think of your why, even if you can think of it, it doesn't matter, you really are craving it. Even something so simple as just focusing on your breath can be a game changer. Taking deep breaths, just counting or focusing on the inhale and exhale, just doing that makes you a lot more present, and in that present state, you'll perhaps be able to recognize what's actually happening, that there's an urge there, that it's trying to overthrow you, that it's trying to lead you back to pleasure, because your brain is like, hey, where's all that pleasure you were giving me? So deep breaths can be very helpful. And one thing about urges, once you conquer them, once you get past them, you will always feel so happy with yourself, so glad that you didn't give in. I mean, there's a reward right there. It's just overcoming it and knowing you're strong enough to do it. It's like every time you do that, you get a little bit more trust in yourself, a little bit more confidence, and you can see the progress. But I'll tell you right now that if you give in to that urge, post-nut clarity, everybody knows about it. It is so real. You are going to... There were times when I literally wanted to kill myself. Like, I literally wanted to take my own life because of how horrible I felt at a relapse. And I would never actually do that, but that's just a very good way to understand what can happen if you actually give in. You just feel so awful, and you lose all your progress, which the next thing I'm going to be talking about here is relapses, so that's a good thing to go over. I already discussed about dealing with the thoughts before they become urges, while they're still temptations. Deal with them early. Don't let them dwell in your mind. The more you dwell on them, which even just the dwelling on them provides your brain with a dopamine drip. So when you have a thought in your mind, and instead of saying, I don't want this here, you know, like, be gone with you, like, instead of praying, instead of going and acting, instead of doing something about it, letting it grow in your mind, thinking about the different images you saw online, how they made you feel, just obsessing over women's bodies, all that stuff in those moments, it goes from a temptation to an urge, and then it can become so overpowering because of all the thoughts, all the energy you're putting into those thoughts, keeping them there, that you are just at the complete mercy of it, and you give in. So defeat them early. Don't dwell on them. Let them pass. There's so many different things we can do to succeed, and that's all that I know is just what I mentioned: meditating, scripture, acting, going and doing something, working out, recalling your why, all of those things. Just understand that there are many options in those moments. Now, the next thing, relapse. If you do find yourself at the point where you have relapsed, I cannot stress enough, please do not be hard on yourself. Please do not. I mean, throughout the years, I would be so upset with myself, and hatred begets more hatred. If you beat yourself up over a relapse, it's going to turn into a downward spiral. You're going to keep relapsing, and then you're going to have to really, like, you're already at square one, you're going to have to start from a few steps behind that, and you don't want to end up in that position. So you want to be able to bounce back quick. When you relapse, you can use it actually to your advantage. Now, what I mean by that is that post-nut clarity, it's like a window of opportunity in a way. When you get it, you can clearly see maybe why it is that you gave in, what led you to relapsing, and what I would do throughout the years. And that's why I'm saying, like, I struggled with this for so long, but I did things to work towards getting out of it little by little. And I'm so blessed and grateful to have gotten to that point. But you can figure out why you relapsed that time, and then you can apply it to the next time when you start anew, and you'll know what to not do that time in order to not relapse again. And it's very great that we have that ability to do that, because that post-nut clarity really does clear things up in your mind. Be very gentle on yourself. Understand that this is kind of the path towards overcoming porn addiction. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's like you may make a lot of progress, and then you may relapse, or you may get very close to relapsing, whatever. And if you handle it correctly, then you're only making maybe 1 step back, and then you're making another 2 steps forward, and it's just, you're still making progress, even if it doesn't seem like it as much. The main thing is you don't want it to become a downward spiral. You want to be able to get right back up, understand why it happened, and just next day you wake up and keep going. And like I said before, it's entirely up to you to make these choices. Once you're aware of them, you have to want it badly enough to be willing to make the sacrifices and make the right choices and go through the pain that is associated with the withdrawals. And if you're willing to do all that, you've already won. Just never repeat the same mistakes. Once you learn those lessons, do not repeat them. You know better. Sometimes when I would be in that state of clarity after releasing, I would get a glimpse of my future self. I would sometimes be able to visualize myself with that clarity in a very successful state. And it gave me a lot of hope. So visualizing yourself where you want to be is very important. And I like to use affirmations too, which are really great technique. Basically, if any of you have ever looked into the law of attraction, believing that you already have what you want is basically how you obtain certain things. So if you visualize yourself in so much detail, exactly how you want to be free from this addiction, and you tell yourself through affirmations that you are already that person, then you shift into that person, and it's very miraculous. But all of these things are subjective that I'm discussing. Well, a lot of what I've discussed before is objective, but what I just discussed is subjective. So, not everybody will benefit from using affirmations, but these are all just things that can help people. And I'm trying to give out pieces of wisdom that some people may benefit from while others may not. Just everybody. I'm trying to really account for everybody here. Now, something to always keep in mind at all times, especially early on. When you first make the choice to quit porn, you're not going to have everything figured out. But the key to all of this, the most important thing is even more important than the method is the power to believe in it. The power to believe that you will succeed and trusting in that unceasingly. Knowing that you are capable, knowing that it is possible, and believing that you will succeed no matter what you have to go through, no matter how long it takes, just knowing without a doubt that you're going to succeed. That is the most important thing in all of this. No doubt about it. Now, I want to go over the scientific side of all of this for those of you who really want some in-depth information. I don't want to take too long, but it's okay if I do, because this information will benefit people, so no matter what, it's worth it. But basically, what porn addiction does to your brain is nothing good. We all know that. But in detail, knowing what it does can actually benefit you, because not everybody believes in God, not everybody wants to be on a spiritual path, this and that. So it's good to know the scientific aspect of it, so that, like I just said, it will benefit people who may be atheists. And I just want to be able to help anybody that I can. So the way that overcoming addiction works is through neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to change by unwiring past thought patterns and brainwave patterns and wiring in new ones. And this happens over a long period of time. But it's very, very encouraging knowing that it's a thing that is possible, knowing that it is what will happen when you choose to quit this addiction and actually stay away from it. The issue with this is that in order for neuroplasticity to take place, you have to completely abstain from the brain patterns that you were in while you were under the influence of pornography. So what that means is when you have an urge, it's like the spark of that old thought pattern. If you defeat the urge, like I said, when it's still a temptation, you're severing that thought pattern, focusing your attention on the present moment, and in the present moment you are working on wiring in a new thought pattern, a new new habits, a new life for yourself. And your brain is going to see that as the norm over time. And just like you are a set of beliefs and habits and a character and a will right now, 10 years from now, you will be a new set of those things because of your actions today. That's why neuroplasticity is so amazing. So, seeing the details in that, when you have those thoughts, just immediately defeating them, figuring out a way past them, that's how you keep neuroplasticity going. And as it goes, your brain is changing, you're healing. It's a really amazing thing. Now, if you give in to the thoughts and relapse, or even just dwell on them, you are building and building and building that thought pattern back into how it was, and then you are basically resetting that plasticity. And it's sad to think of it that way, but that's how it works. So, in essence, in order to benefit and reap the benefits from neuroplasticity, you have to stay away from it entirely. Now, just having an urge or a thought is not going to reignite that brain pattern. But as soon as you start to dwell on it, then that's what's happening. Now, withdrawal symptoms are very real from porn addiction. I myself have felt very mood swings. I felt outbursts of anger at times. I felt like I was in a state of complete, utter emptiness. Like I had no pleasure. Nothing that I was doing at different times was making me happy. I just didn't have any clue what to do in those moments. I just felt lost. All these different things. Like your brain is going through such significant changes that it really affects your daily life. Luckily, the withdrawal symptoms subside relatively quickly within a few weeks. I know it would be better to not have to deal with them at all, but we do. And there are still lingering symptoms for months after you quit, but it gets more controllable and it gets easier to bear. So being aware of the fact that you're going to have to go through these withdrawal symptoms is helpful, because when they arise, you can recognize what they are and realize that it's the process of your brain healing. Now, one thing that I haven't really heard many people in other videos discuss on the science aspect of this is how strengthening your prefrontal cortex plays into this addiction. Especially, I'm 23 years old. My prefrontal cortex has not fully developed yet. It's the last part of your brain to develop, and it develops around the age of 26. So for those of you who are younger than 26, and those of you who are older than 26, but especially the younger, strengthening your prefrontal cortex will allow you to will be a great friend in this process, because your prefrontal cortex deals with judgments and decision making. And if you're like me and you were using drugs and doing all these reckless things as a young kid, my judgment has been very impaired by that, and that's why for so long I acted so impulsively all the time, just without even thinking first. That's all in the prefrontal cortex. So strengthening that will allow you to make better decisions, have better judgment, think more clearly, a lot of different things. And I'll tell you right now some ways that you can do that. One way is by just learning new things, learning a language, learning a subject in school that you never really studied, studying it more in depth, going out of your way, problem solving, doing puzzles, literally just all sorts of different things like that. Just learning a new skill really is probably the best way to go about it. Anything that challenges it. And it's also very healthy and a positive habit to be doing those things. So that's how you strengthen it. And it's very helpful to do so. So yes, by being aware of what's happening behind the scenes in your brain, you have just another layer of protection that can help you in this journey of overcoming this addiction. So I'm glad that I was able to share that side of it with you. It doesn't get touched on a whole lot. I just wanted to mention as well that if you're really serious about quitting this addiction, you shouldn't just take my advice. You should watch as many videos on it as possible. I can't cover everything in one video, and I couldn't possibly learn everything there is to learn about it just myself. So watch other people's videos too. Gold Jacket Luke, Angel, I Am Lucid, are a few YouTubers that I know that make videos on the subject, and they're great. And just obtaining as much wisdom you can about the subject will only benefit you. So that's all I had to discuss in terms of the method, but there are a few points that I still wanted to bring up. So on a deeper level, what's going on really in your mind when you are a slave to this addiction is your perception of women is completely skewed. It is completely contrary to how it should be. Like, you're seeing women as objects of pleasure. You're seeing them as just almost not human, really. It's like, they're just, especially if it's a porn addiction, not necessarily a sex addiction, but a porn addiction, you're seeing them as like images on a screen that just, you can find images of them doing, videos of them doing anything you want, like any fantasy you can think of, really. So it's like, you're abusing that to such an extent, and it's exactly why it's such a difficult addiction to overcome. You have your phone on you on all times. It's so easy to just access it, and but just trust me, you can overcome it. You can beat this addiction, and I have faith in all of you, and I know that you can do it. But through this recovery journey, you will start to see women in a positive way again. You'll start to see them as humans, as complete beings, not just certain parts of them, the explicit parts, but you'll see all of them, and you'll start to see them with love instead of lust, and you'll start to be able to talk with them without feeling this sense of weird guilt inside of you. Oh, I can't talk to this woman, like it's like you think about what you just watched the night before, and then you're talking to a woman, you're like disgusted with yourself. That will go away because you start to see them how you're meant to see them, in a divine way. Other than what I just said about believing in yourself, feeling grateful is another thing that is immensely helpful. I like to do a gratitude prayer every morning, and I don't just feel grateful for the good things I have in life, but I feel grateful for all of the pain I've gone through and all my past experiences too, because as I said before, love is the only thing that can defeat lust. So when you're in those states of strong urges, or weakness, you can't fight it with more violence. You have to just sort of dispel it with love. And gratitude is a great thing to use in those moments. I mean, if you can't do anything else, then just feel grateful, and I guarantee those urges will fall away. I had to bring that up. I just had to. Do not be afraid to seek outside help. I myself, through my journey, had to get help from all of my friends, and I can't thank them all enough. I mean, I would have not gotten to where I am now if it weren't for them. So some of you may benefit from going to rehab if it's something that's accessible to you. If it's something that you think that you'd benefit from, if you can afford it, rehab. Just do anything that you can, really. Don't be afraid. Don't be prideful. I mean, just conquering this addiction is number one priority. Just get rid of it in any way you can. But if you're like me and rehab wasn't an option, then just following the methods and the things that I discussed in this video, you'll be fine. But having an accountability partner is great. I mean, I was never fortunate enough in my life to have somebody else that was trying to quit porn to talk to you all the time. I mean, currently right now I know people, but when I was really trying to quit, I didn't know anybody then. But if you know anybody that wants to quit it too, make them your accountability partner. Hold each other accountable. Really be serious about it. You know, just know that, you know, one of you has to initiate it, one of you has to take action. But if you want to quit it badly enough, then you will be that person to wake up every morning, to do what you need to do, and the addiction will fall away because your will is strong enough. You want to put it out in the open, which is partly of what I'm doing right now by making a YouTube video. I mean, share it with people around you. Tell them your struggles. Ask for help. Be honest about it. Don't lie about anything. Like, just doing those things, in my experience, has, like, it's shed so much of the darkness away from it. You know, and it's so wonderful now, too, how many people are realizing that it's an issue. I mean, knowing that it's an issue, and knowing that many people are struggling with it and working on it, it's just so encouraging. And by putting it out in the open and being honest, you are taking all the power it has over you away. And yeah, I highly recommend doing that. I have a few more points before I wrap up, and then I'm going to get to the detailed layout of the routine. But one thing that I've learned that's been invaluable to me is that you can learn to make use, to wield the suffering that you go through. So, nobody likes to feel pain, of course, but overcoming an addiction is a very painful process, especially while you're still locked into it. But you can channel that pain that you've felt at all times and use it as a form of strength. Like, sometimes when I'm at the gym and I'm lifting a heavy object, I start to feel weak, you know? I will literally start to feel the suffering that I felt during the addiction, and then just feel myself overcoming it in that moment, knowing that, like, I'm working every day to best it. And I just gain access to, like, almost superhuman strength in those moments. Like, it's like groundbreaking stuff, and you'll see it for yourself when you start to do that. But suffering can be a great teacher. It can be a great tool for you to use in your journey, and I highly recommend finding a way to channel it to serve you, because every human being has to suffer. It will never be something that fully goes away. So in those moments of suffering, by being present, by seeing it with loving eyes, you can turn it into something magical, something spectacular. It's just try it. You'll see.